At Thanksgiving dinner, my sister stood up and announced, "We took a vote, and you're no longer part of this family." Everyone nodded. I said, "Okay," and I left. 3 days later, the bank called them. I was carving the turkey when my sister, Clarissa, clinked her fork against her wine glass. The room fell silent. "We need to talk about something as a family," she said, looking right at me. "We took a vote last week. You are no longer part of this family." I slowly set the carving knife down on the table. My parents nodded. My brother, Holden, avoided making eye contact. My other sister, Harper, was recording the whole thing on her phone. Even Nana Beatrice folded her napkin and muttered, "It's for the best." "You voted to kick me out of the family?" I asked. "It was unanimous," my father said. "You never truly fit in. Different values, different priorities. You're always working. You never come to family events. You missed 3 holiday dinners in 5 years," my mother added. "You didn't even come to Harper's gender reveal," Clarissa accused. "I was performing an emergency surgery." "Exactly," my mother snapped. "You think you're better than us with your doctor job and your fancy hospital. We are simple people. You don't belong here." Holden finally spoke up. "Plus, you never help with the family expenses. Clarissa needs money for her kids. Harper is trying to get her startup off the ground, but you just hoard your wealth." "I paid the $10,000 out-of-pocket deductible for Dad's bypass surgery," I said quietly. "And I've been paying the mortgage on this house for 8 years. "That's different," my father interjected quickly. "That was your choice." Clarissa stood up taller, like the director of a school play. "Look, we've made our decision. Pack your things from your old room. Don't contact us anymore. We'll just tell people you relocated for work." Nana Beatrice nodded. "The Gallagher name stays with the real family." I looked at each of them. These people I had loved and supported my entire life. "Okay," I said. I set the carving fork down, grabbed my coat from the back of the chair, and walked out. My mother yelled after me, "You can't just leave. Finish carving the turkey." I didn't look back. That night, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to the bank. "I need to remove myself from the mortgage I've been paying," I said. The woman on the phone sounded confused. "Ma'am, yours is the only name on the mortgage." I stayed silent. The chill of the November air seeped through my car window, but I couldn't feel it. I could only hear my own breathing and the confused voice of the bank representative on the line. "Are you entirely sure?" I asked. "The property located at 847 Maplewood Drive is registered solely to Dr. Sloan Gallagher. You have been the sole payer for the last 8 years. There are no co-signers or additional beneficiaries." 8 years, 96 monthly payments, nearly $200,000. All out of my checking account, all in my name, and they had just kicked me out of a house that legally belonged to me. "Thank you," I said. "I'll call you tomorrow for the next steps." I hung up and stared at the steering wheel. The streetlights intermittently illuminated the interior of my car. I could see my reflection in the windshield, a 34-year-old woman with her hair still tied back from a hospital shift, deep circles under her eyes, and an expression I didn't recognize. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't rage. It was clarity. For 34 years, I lived believing that family was sacred, that blood was an obligation, that sacrifice would eventually be recognized. 2 hours ago, my family voted to expel me while I was carving the heritage turkey I paid for with my credit card on a dining table I bought 3 years ago, inside a house whose mortgage was automatically deducted from my account on the 1st of every month. "Unanimous," they said. I picked up my phone and dialed the second number. "Law offices of Vance Sterling," a female voice answered. "This is Dr. Sloan Gallagher. I need to speak to Vance. It's an emergency." "Dr. Gallagher, Mr. Sterling is at a Thanksgiving dinner. Tell him it's about the Maplewood Drive property. He'll understand." 30 seconds later, Vance was on the line. "Sloan, what happened?" Vance had been my lawyer for 6 years. He prepared all the closing documents when I bought the house. He had warned me to list my parents as beneficiaries, not co-owners. I had insisted that it didn't matter, that they were my family, that trusting them was natural. "You were right," I told him. "About what?" "About everything. I need you to draft eviction papers." Silence. "For who?" "For my family, everyone. My parents, my siblings, whoever is living in that house." Vance didn't ask why. He just said, "I'll be in my office tomorrow morning at 8. Bring all the original documents. I'll be there." I hung up and dialed the third number. Delaney picked up on the second ring. "Sloan, aren't you at Thanksgiving dinner?" Delaney Hayes had been my best friend since our residency. We worked together at Mercy General, her in pediatrics, me in cardiovascular surgery. She knew my family, she knew my history, and she had always told me I gave them entirely too much. "Can I crash at your place tonight?" I asked. "Of course. What happened?" "My family took a vote to kick me out." Delaney went dead silent for 3 full seconds. "They voted?" "Unanimous. I'm officially no longer a Gallagher." "Sloan, I don't I don't want to talk about it right now. I just need a place to sleep. Come over, I'm waiting. I started the car and drove toward Delaney's condo. The drive took 40 minutes from my parents' house. 40 minutes I used to mentally review everything that had happened in the last 2 hours. The dinner had started normally. I arrived straight from the hospital with the turkey I had pre-ordered the week before. It cost $150. Clarissa greeted me with a fake hug and told me I looked exhausted. Harper barely said hello because she was too busy setting up her ring light for her social media followers. Holden asked me to Venmo him $50 before I even took my coat off. My parents were in the living room watching football. My mother complained that the turkey looked small. My father didn't get off the couch. Nana Beatrice arrived half an hour later, looked me up and down, and commented that I needed to get married soon because my biological clock was ticking. Everything was normal. Everything was exactly as it always was. I had just started carving the turkey when Clarissa clinked her glass. We need to talk about something as a family. I looked up. Everyone was staring at me. Clarissa had that smirk she gets when she knows a secret nobody else does. We took a vote last week, she continued. You're no longer part of this family. The knife stopped mid-slice. You voted to kick me out of the family? It was unanimous, my father confirmed from the head of the table. You never truly fit in, Sloan. Different values, different priorities. You're always working, my mother added. You never come to family events. You missed 3 holiday dinners in 5 years. You didn't even come to Harper's gender reveal, Clarissa said with an accusatory tone. I was doing an emergency surgery. An 8-year-old boy with a congenital heart defect. Exactly. My mother crossed her arms. You always have excuses. You think you're better than us with your doctor job and your fancy hospital. We are simple people. You don't belong here. Holden finally spoke. Plus, you never help with the family expenses. Clarissa needs money for her kids. Harper is trying to get her startup off the ground, but you just hoard your wealth. I looked directly at him. I paid the $10,000 out of pocket for Dad's bypass surgery, and I've been paying the mortgage on this house for 8 years. That's different, my father interrupted quickly. That was your choice. Nobody forced you. Clarissa stood up again. Look, Sloan, we've made our decision. Pack your things from your old room. Don't contact us anymore. We'll just tell people you relocated for work. Nana Beatrice nodded slowly. The Gallagher name stays with the real family. I looked at them, one by one. My father, who almost died 3 years ago and whose life I saved by paying for a surgery his Medicare wouldn't fully cover. My mother, who hadn't worked a day in her life, living off my father's modest pension and the emergency funds I transferred to her every month. Clarissa, the older sister who dropped out of college to marry a guy who abandoned her with 3 kids and 0 income. Holden, the younger brother who, at 28, had never held a job for more than 6 months. The middle sister, Harper, who blew through $40,000 of angel investor money on an artisanal candle business that never took off. And Nana, the woman who raised me constantly preaching that women had to martyr themselves for the family. They all expected me to cry, to beg, to promise I'd change. Okay, I said. I left the carving knife on the table, grabbed my coat, and walked out to the freezing November air to make the 3 calls that would change everything. Now, 40 minutes later, I parked in front of Delaney's building. I walked up to the 3rd floor. She opened the door before I even knocked. I saw you pull up from the window, she explained. She hugged me without saying a word. I let her, even though I'm not normally a hugger. I needed 30 seconds of human contact that didn't come with strings attached. We went inside. Her apartment was small but cozy, smelling like cinnamon because she always had candles burning. Do you want wine? She asked. No. I want to tell you what I'm going to do. We sat on her sofa. I told her everything. The dinner, the vote, the call to the bank, the call to Vance. Delaney listened without interrupting. When I finished, she looked at me intently. You're going to evict them? It's legally my house. It always was. They live there because I allowed it. They're going to hate you. They already hate me. They voted to kick me out while I was carving the turkey I bought for them. Delaney nodded slowly. How do you feel? I thought about it before answering. Free, I said. For the first time in 34 years, I feel free. My phone started buzzing. It was Clarissa. I declined the call. It buzzed again. Holden, declined. Again. My mother, declined. They're not going to stop, Delaney observed. I know, I powered the phone off. What's your plan for tomorrow? She asked. Go to the bank, meet with Vance, start the eviction process, and then look for an apartment. A small one, just for me. Delaney smiled faintly. I know a building near the hospital. They're renovating it and have units available. The contractor is a friend of my neighbor. His name is Gideon. He's a good guy. I didn't think much of it at the time. I just nodded and accepted the throw blanket Delaney handed me. That night, I slept on her couch. I didn't dream. For the first time in years, My mind was completely silent. At 6 a.m., I woke up. Delaney was already brewing coffee. Ready? She asked. Ready. I showered, changed into the emergency scrubs I always kept in my trunk, and headed to Vance's office. The legal process began today, and my family had no idea what was coming. Vance reviewed the documents 3 times before speaking. Sloan, legally, this house is yours. It always has been. Your parents never signed a deed. They aren't co-owners, they aren't tenants in common, they have absolutely no legal right to the property. I know. Why did you never add them to the title? Because you told me not to. And I trusted your legal advice more than my instinct to people-please my family. Vance closed the folder. An eviction process usually takes 30 to 60 days, but since there is no formal lease agreement, we can serve them with a notice to quit and expedite the proceedings. Do it. Are you certain? Once we serve this notice, there's no going back. I looked him dead in the eye. Vance, yesterday my family took a vote to expel me while I was serving them dinner. I'm certain. I signed the paperwork right there. Vance would file it with the county clerk and the sheriff's department. My family would receive the official notice in 3 days. 3 days until their world collapsed. I left the law office and drove to Mercy General. My shift started at 10. Delaney was waiting by the parking garage elevators. How did it go? She asked as we walked inside. Signed everything. They get served in 3 days. And how are you? I have a valve replacement in 40 minutes. I don't have time to process emotions. Delaney didn't push. That was our friendship. She asked once. I gave what I could, and we kept moving. The shift flew by. 2 scheduled surgeries, 1 emergency trauma, and 4 hours of charting. When I finally walked out of the hospital, it was 9 p.m. I turned my phone back on. 47 missed calls. 22 text messages. All from my family. I read them as I walked to my car. Clarissa. Why aren't you answering? We need to talk about yesterday. Holden. Sloan. Mom is crying. Call her. Harper. I think we overreacted. We can fix this. Mother. Sloan. This is ridiculous. Come home. Father. Your mother is very upset. Call me. I didn't reply to a single one. I got into my car and drove toward the building Delaney had mentioned. It was a red brick mid-rise in a gentrifying neighborhood near downtown. 6 floors, vintage facade, but covered in scaffolding. A sign on the door read, Units available. Inquire at 3B. I walked up the stairs. The 3rd floor smelled like fresh paint and sawdust. I knocked on 3B. A man in his mid-30s opened the door. Dark hair, neat beard, paint splatters on his gray t-shirt. Hi. I'm looking for information on the available units. Delaney Hayes told me to ask here. Oh, you're Delaney's friend. I'm Gideon. Come on in. The apartment was mid-renovation. Blueprints on a folding table, power tools on the floor, and a Keurig that seemed to be the only functioning appliance. Coffee? He offered. No, thank you. I just want to see the units. Gideon nodded. Straight to the point. I respect it. I have 2 available. One on the 4th floor, about 650 square feet. Another on the 5th, 850 square feet. Both will be move-in ready in 2 weeks. Can I see them? He took me to the 4th floor first. It was compact but functional. Open kitchen, 1 bedroom, full bath, street-facing windows. This one's more budget-friendly, Gideon explained. The 5th floor has better light and more space. We walked up to the 5th. The moment I walked in, I knew it was the one. Incredible natural light, high ceilings, exposed brick, and a small balcony overlooking a local park. I'll take this one, I said. Gideon looked surprised. You don't want to know the rent first? How much? $2,500 a month, plus utilities. That's fine, I don't need to think about it. Gideon pulled a lease agreement from his clipboard. Normally, I require references, credit checks, and proof of employment. I'm a cardiovascular surgeon at Mercy General. I've been there for 8 years. I can give you HR's direct line. Delaney told me about you, Gideon said as he filled out the top of the lease. She said you were the most reliable person she knows. Delaney exaggerates. She also said you were going through a rough patch. I didn't reply. Gideon didn't pry. He finished the paperwork and handed me a pen. Will December 15th work for move-in? Do you have somewhere to stay until then? I'll manage. I signed the lease, wrote him a check for the security deposit, and left. 3 days later, Vance called me. The notice to quit was served by the sheriff's deputies this morning. Your family has it. Thank you, Vance. Brace yourself, Sloan. They are going to react. I didn't have to wait long. At 4 p.m., my phone exploded. Call after call, text after text. But this time, the tone was entirely different. Clarissa, what did you do? We just got a letter from the court. Holden. Sloan, is this a joke? Eviction? Mother, how could you do this to us? Father, call me immediately. This is a massive mistake. Harper. Sloan, please, there has to be a misunderstanding. I ignored all of it. I was scrubbing out of an OR when the messages hit. By the time I reached the locker room, I had 83 notifications. Delaney found me in the cafeteria. Did they get it? Yes. How do you feel? Starving. I haven't eaten in 8 hours. Delaney sat across from me, sliding a turkey club across the table. Your sister called the hospital, she said carefully. 3 times. Reception told her you were in surgery. Which sister? Clarissa. Typical. Your brother also showed up. Holden. I saw him arguing with security in the parking deck an hour ago. They wouldn't let him in without a visitor pass. I chewed my sandwich, unfazed. Sloan, at some point you're gonna have to talk to them. No, I don't have to do anything. They're your family. They were my family. They said so themselves. I'm no longer part of the Gallaghers. Delaney sighed. What are they going to do? Where are they going to live? Not my problem. Sloan. Delaney, for 8 years I paid for that house. I paid for my father's bypass. I paid off Clarissa's credit card debt. I funded Harper's failed startup. I lent Holden money he never paid back. And how did they thank me? By taking a vote to kick me out of the family. I dropped the sandwich onto the paper plate. I owe them nothing. Absolutely nothing. Delaney didn't push it. We finished eating in silence. That night, when I walked out to the parking garage, Clarissa was leaning against the hood of my car. We need to talk, she demanded. No, we don't. Sloan, you can't kick us out of the house. It's my house. It always was. But we live there. Mom and Dad have nowhere to go. You should have factored that into your little vote before you kicked me out of the family. Clarissa blocked my path to the driver's side door. Listen to me. We can fix this. The vote was stupid, I admit it. But you can't destroy the family over it. I destroyed the family? I repeated, my voice eerily calm. Clarissa, you expelled me. You all decided I was no longer a Gallagher. I'm just acting exactly like the stranger you told me I was. You can't do this! I already did. I pushed past her, unlocked my car, and got in. As I pulled out of the spot, I looked in the rearview mirror and saw Clarissa screaming something I couldn't hear. I didn't care. A week after the eviction notice was served, Harper showed up at the hospital. She didn't come screaming like Clarissa. She didn't come begging like Holden. She simply sat in the surgical waiting room and asked the front desk to page me when my shift ended. Delaney gave me the heads up. Harper is downstairs. She's been sitting there for 3 hours. 3 hours? Says she's not leaving until you hear her out. I clocked out at 7 p.m. and went down to the waiting room. Harper was sitting in the corner, clutching a manila folder. 5 minutes, I told her. That's all you get. We went into the empty cafeteria. Harper slid the folder across the table. Before you say anything, I need to show you this. She opened the folder. Inside were printed bank statements, Venmo receipts, and screenshots of text conversations. What is this? The reason we voted you out. I started flipping through the pages. They were bank transfers from my parents' checking and retirement accounts directly to Clarissa, every single month for the last 3 years. Amounts ranging from $500 to $2,000. Clarissa told Mom and Dad that you stopped helping us 3 years ago, Harper explained quietly. She told them you stopped paying the mortgage, and that they had to cover everything because you were refusing to. That is a lie. I know that now. Harper pulled out a screenshot. It was a family group chat. I wasn't in it. Clarissa. Sloan told me she's not giving us another dime. She says she's done enough. Mom. How can she be so selfish? Clarissa. You know how she is. She thinks she's better than us. Holden. So who's going to pay the mortgage? Clarissa. I can handle the logistics if everyone chips into my account. I read the whole thread. Clarissa had masterfully crafted a narrative where I was the villain who abandoned them, and she was the martyr sacrificing everything to keep a roof over their heads. How did you get this? I asked. From Mom's iPad. After the sheriff served the eviction notice, Mom started digging. She found the deed online. She saw that the mortgage was entirely in your name and that the auto drafts never stopped. She confronted Clarissa. And what did Clarissa say? She tried to gaslight her, said it was a misunderstanding, that she thought you stopped paying, that the money Mom and Dad gave her was just for the kids' emergencies. Mom actually believed her at first. Harper shook her head. But Dad didn't. Dad audited their accounts. He figured out Clarissa siphoned over $70,000 in 3 years. Money that was supposedly going to the mortgage you stopped paying. $70,000. My parents lived on a modest pension and the monthly stipend I sent them. Where did they get 70 grand to give to Clarissa? They drained their 401k, Harper said, as if reading my mind. Everything. They have nothing left. I leaned back in the plastic chair, processing it. Why are you telling me this? Because I owe you an apology. I voted against you because I believed Clarissa's lies. We all did. You could have picked up the phone and asked me directly. I should have. I didn't. And I'm sorry. Harper closed the folder. I didn't come here to ask you to forgive us. I didn't come to beg you to stop the eviction. I just came to tell you the truth. You deserve to know why it happened." We sat in silence for a moment. "Where is everyone going to live?" I finally asked. "Mom and Dad are moving into Aunt Sylvia's spare room. Holden found a cheap sublet near his warehouse job. Clarissa." Harper paused. "Preston left Clarissa 2 days ago." "What?" "When her ex-husband found out what she did. When he saw the group chats and the missing money, he filed for full custody. He said he couldn't trust his kids around someone capable of bankrupting her own parents and destroying her sister over money. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel pity, either. Just a strange, hollow void." "And you?" I asked. "Where are you going?" "I found a roommate situation across town. It's a terrible commute to my barista job, but I can afford it." Harper stood up. "I don't expect you to forgive me, Sloan. I just wanted you to know that we aren't all completely blind. Some of us learned our lesson." She walked away without waiting for a response. I sat in the cafeteria until Delaney came looking for me. "What happened?" she asked. I told her everything. Delaney listened, shaking her head. "How do you feel?" "I don't know. I should feel triumphant, but I just feel empty." "That's normal. You just had it confirmed that your own sister conned your family and framed you for it." That night, I didn't go back to Delaney's condo. I needed to be alone. I drove to Gideon's building. My new apartment wasn't finished, but I wanted to see the progress. I walked up to the 5th floor. The door was propped open. Gideon was inside, installing kitchen cabinets under a work light. "Sloan," he said, surprised. "Wasn't expecting to see you tonight. Can I come in?" "Sure. Watch your step. There are nails everywhere." I walked in and sat on the bare floorboards near the window. Gideon went back to using his drill, not asking any questions. "Do you always work this late?" I asked after 10 minutes of silence. "When I have a lot on my mind, yeah. Keeping my hands busy keeps the noise down." "What's on your mind?" Gideon set the drill down. "My ex-wife moved my daughter to Seattle 2 years ago. I only get to see Alara once a month." "I'm sorry." "Thanks. But that's not why I'm working late tonight." He came over and sat on the floor across from me. Delaney gave me the cliff notes. "Not the details, just that you were going through a brutal family situation. Delaney has a big mouth. Delaney is protective of you." I didn't respond. "I'm not going to pry," Gideon continued. "But if you ever need a quiet place to just exist, this building is empty at night. You have the keys. Come whenever." "Why would you do that for someone you barely know?" "Because a stranger did the exact same thing for me when I was fighting my custody battle. A guy let me use his woodshop at 2 a.m. so I wouldn't lose my mind in my empty apartment. Sometimes strangers treat you better than your own blood." I looked at him, really looked at him. Then I looked out the window. I sat there for 2 hours while he finished the cabinets. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. The hum of the power tools and the shared silence was enough. When I finally stood up to leave, Gideon walked me to the door. "The place will be done in 10 days, he said, ahead of schedule." "Thank you, Gideon." "Yeah. And Sloan? Whatever happened with your family, it wasn't your fault. People who genuinely love you don't put your worth to a vote." I nodded and walked down the stairs. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. On December 15th, my family lost the house. Vance called me that morning to confirm the eviction was executed. Sheriff's deputies stood in the driveway while my parents, Holden and Clarissa, moved their belongings into rented U-Hauls. "Any issues?" I asked. "Your sister Clarissa tried to argue with the deputies, told them it was an illegal eviction and that the house belonged to your parents. The sergeant showed her the court order. She shut up after that." "And my parents?" "Your mother cried the whole time. Your father didn't say a word." I hung up and went about my day. I had 3 CABG surgeries scheduled. There was no time for guilt. That evening, when I arrived at my new apartment, I found my father waiting on the sidewalk outside the brick building. He looked old, noticeably older than he had 3 weeks ago. He was wearing the same coat he wore on Thanksgiving. "Sloan, Dad, do you want to come up?" I led him up to the 5th floor. My apartment was mostly empty. I only had a mattress on the floor, a small folding table, and 2 camp chairs Gideon had lent me. My father looked around but didn't comment on the sparse setup. "Can I get you some water?" I offered. "It's all I have in the fridge." "I didn't come for water." We sat in the canvas chairs. It took my father a full minute to speak. "Your mother and I are staying with Aunt Sylvia. Her place is a 1-bedroom. We're sleeping on a pull-out couch." I didn't say anything. Clarissa told us everything. Well, the truth, I mean. After Preston filed for custody, she had a breakdown. She confessed that she had been lying to us about you for years. 3 years. "Did you know?" "I found out a week ago. Harper brought me the receipts." My father wrung his hands, a nervous tic he's always had. "We gave her $70,000, every penny of my $401K. We thought we were covering the mortgage because you refused to. I never missed a single payment, Dad." I know that now." He stared at the floor. Sloan, we made a catastrophic mistake. All of us. The vote, the accusations. Clarissa manipulated us. But that doesn't excuse what we did. We should have asked you. We should have listened. Yes, you should have. Is there any way to fix this? I looked at him. This man who, 3 weeks ago, sat at the head of the table and agreed I didn't belong, who let my mother scream at me as I walked out the door. I don't know, Dad. Honestly, I don't. You broke something that can't just be glued back together. We just want a chance. Your mother wants to talk to you. I'm not ready to talk to Mom. I'm talking to you. Right now. That's all I can offer. My father nodded slowly. He stood up from the camp chair. Nana Beatrice had a stroke 2 days ago. I froze. She's at St. Jude Medical Center. The doctors say it was a mild TIA, but she needs rehab. Why didn't anyone call me? Your mother wanted to. But Clarissa told her there was no point, that you wouldn't care. Clarissa doesn't speak for me. I know. That's why I came to tell you myself. My father walked toward the door. Room 412. If you want to go. He left. I sat in the camp chair for 20 minutes. Then I grabbed my keys and left. St. Jude was a 15-minute drive. I knew the attending neurologist there. I asked for her chart at the nurse's station, then walked into room 412. Nana Beatrice was asleep. She looked incredibly fragile against the stark white hospital sheets. The monitors beeped in a steady, reassuring rhythm. I pulled up a chair. I didn't speak. I just looked at her. This woman who raised me to believe women were meant to be martyrs, who told me the Gallagher name was for the real family, who nodded in agreement when I was exiled. But she was also the woman who taught me how to read, who made me hot cocoa when I had the flu, who kept all my kindergarten drawings in a shoebox in her closet. People aren't black and white. Families aren't either. Nana opened her eyes. Sloan, it's me, Nana. I thought you wouldn't come. I thought about not coming. She reached out a trembling hand with an IV taped to the back of it. I took it. What we said at Thanksgiving was cruel, she rasped. Yes, it was. Clarissa convinced us it was tough love. She said you needed an ultimatum to wake up, that if we pushed you to the edge, you'd finally step up and help the family. I helped for 8 years. It was never enough. I know. We were fools. Nana squeezed my hand with surprising strength. I'm not asking you to forgive us. I'm just asking you not to forget us completely. We made terrible mistakes, but we love you. I didn't reply. I couldn't. I stayed with her until she fell back asleep, and then I left. When I walked out to the hospital parking lot, Holden was standing by my car. Dad texted me that you'd be here, he explained. Were you waiting to ambush me? I'm here to apologize. No excuses, no gaslighting. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. Why did you vote against me, Holden? Because Clarissa said it was the only way to get through to you, and I went along with it because letting her do the thinking was easier than taking responsibility myself. I've always been a follower. I know. I'm working on it. I started seeing a therapist last week. I looked at him, genuinely shocked. Holden had always mocked the idea of therapy. Seriously, he said. Getting evicted was a wake-up call. I'm 28 years old and I've never been responsible for my own life. I always depended on Mom, on Dad, on you, on Clarissa's schemes. It's time I grew up. I'm glad to hear that, Holden. I don't expect you to forgive me anytime soon. Just wanted you to know I'm trying to be better. He walked to his own car and left. No begging, no drama, no asking for Venmo. It was the first time I'd seen him act like an adult. I drove back to my apartment. Gideon was out front, unloading drywall from his truck. Everything okay? He asked, seeing my face under the streetlight. My grandmother had a stroke. I just came from the hospital. Damn. I'm sorry. Gideon dropped a sheet of drywall. Do you want some company? I don't even know what I want right now. Then let's go get a coffee and not think about anything. We walked to a late-night diner on the corner. We ordered 2 black coffees. We didn't talk about my family. We didn't talk about his ex-wife. We talked about architecture, about heart bypass techniques, about movies we never had the time to watch. 2 hours later, I realized I was laughing. It was the first time I had laughed in a month. 3 months passed. Nana Beatrice was discharged from rehab in January. She recovered better than the doctors predicted. I sent a floral arrangement to Aunt Sylvia's house, but I didn't visit. Clarissa vanished. According to Harper, she moved to Florida after the custody hearing. She didn't leave a forwarding address. She didn't call anyone to say goodbye. My parents were still living in Aunt Sylvia's spare room. My father called me every Sunday afternoon, 10-minute conversations. He never asked for money. He just asked how my week was. Holden got a stable job at a logistics warehouse. He hadn't called out sick in 2 months. He was still in therapy. Harper opened a small bakery with a friend, this time starting small, without demanding angel investments from family. She invited me to the grand opening. I went, and I brought Gideon. Gideon had become a fixture in my routine without me even realizing it. It started with diner coffees after my shifts. Then it evolved into ordering Thai takeout on the floor of my apartment. Then phone calls that lasted past midnight. One night in February, while we were eating at a bistro near Mercy General, he asked me a question. Why do you never talk about exactly what happened with your family? Because it's in the past, but it still affects you. A lot of things affect me. I don't broadcast all of them. Gideon took a sip of his beer. My ex-wife left me because she said I never let her in, that I lived entirely inside my own head and locked the door. She was right, honestly. It took me years to realize that protecting myself didn't have to mean isolating myself. I looked at him, this man who bumped into my life by accident, who lent me camp chairs when I had no furniture, who offered me an empty building as a sanctuary. My family took a vote to kick me out, I said quietly. On Thanksgiving. While I was carving the turkey I bought for them, Gideon didn't look shocked. He just listened. I had been paying the mortgage on their house for 8 years. I paid out of pocket for my dad's heart surgery. I funded their failed businesses. I lent them money they never intended to repay. And they expelled me because my sister convinced them I was a selfish hoarder. So what did you do? I legally evicted them. The house was in my name. Do you regret it? I thought about it. I only regret that it took me 34 years to set a boundary. Gideon reached across the table and covered my hand with his. Thank you for telling me. Thank you for listening. That night, Gideon kissed me for the first time. It was in the hallway of my building, under the flickering fluorescent light. There were no fireworks or movie soundtracks, just his hands on my face and the overwhelming sensation that, finally, something in my life was simply right. In March, my mother asked to see me. Not through my father, she texted me directly. Sloan, I need to speak with you in person. Please. I agreed to meet her at a neutral coffee shop. I arrived 10 minutes early. She walked in exactly on time. She looked entirely different. Thinner, her hair more gray than blonde, new lines around her mouth. Thank you for meeting me, she said, sitting down. What did you want to talk about, Mom? She reached into her purse and pulled out a standard bank envelope. This is yours. I opened it. It was a cashier's check for $5,000. What is this? It's what we could scrape together from the money we gave Clarissa. I sold my diamond tennis bracelet. Your father sold his truck. It's not everything we owe you, but it's a start. I slid the check back across the table. I don't want your money, Mom. It's not my money, it's yours. We stole it from you without realizing it. You didn't steal it, Clarissa stole it, and you let her because it was easier to believe her than to actually look at the daughter sitting right in front of you. My mother's eyes filled with tears. It wasn't manipulation. I knew her manipulative tears. These were different. They were heavy with shame. I spent 34 years raising you, she whispered, her voice breaking. And I never truly saw you. You were always the strong one, the responsible one, the one who didn't need anything. I never stopped to think that maybe you didn't ask for help because you knew we wouldn't give it. I didn't say anything. Not because I didn't have words, but because it was the first time my mother had ever accurately described my entire existence. I'm not asking you to forgive me, she said, wiping her face with a napkin. I don't deserve it. I just want you to know I am so deeply sorry. I failed you as a mother. I picked up the check and put it in my bag. I'm going to donate this to a local women's domestic violence shelter, I told her. That's your decision to make. Yes, it is. We sat in silence as the barista called out orders in the background. Is there any chance we can ever be a family again? My mother asked softly. Not the way we were. The family we had before Thanksgiving doesn't exist anymore. Can we be something new? Maybe. With time. With very strict boundaries. And without Clarissa. Clarissa is gone. We don't even know what state she's in. It's better that way. My mother nodded and stood up to leave. Your father turned 65 in April. We're having a small dinner at Aunt Sylvia's. Just us. No pressure. If you want to come, the door is open. I'll think about it. That's all I can ask. That evening, I told Gideon about the conversation. We were sitting on his couch watching a documentary. Are you going to go to the birthday dinner, he asked. I don't know. What's holding you back? The fear that the second I walk in, the dynamic will reset and everything will go back to the way it was. Gideon pulled me into his side. It can't go back to the way it was, Sloan, because you aren't the same person you were. He was right. The Sloan from 6 months ago would have RSVP'd immediately. She would have bought a ridiculously expensive gift. She would have offered to cater the dinner. She would have shrunk herself to keep the peace. That Sloan didn't exist anymore. In April, I went to my father's birthday. I arrived at 7 p.m. Aunt Sylvia's house was cramped but warm. It was just my parents, Holden, Harper, and Aunt Sylvia. Nobody else. I brought a bottle of mid-tier Cabernet. I didn't cook a single thing. The dinner was painfully normal. No drama, no passive-aggressive comments, no crying. When I got up to leave at 9:30, my father walked me to my car. Thank you for coming, Sloan. Thank you for inviting me. Will you come back? If things stay like this? Yes. My father smiled. It was a genuine, relaxed smile I hadn't seen on his face in years. That's all I can ask. I got into my car and drove home. Gideon was waiting for me at my apartment. How did it go? He asked as I unlocked the door. Good. Strangely good. Do you feel different? I feel free. Gideon kissed me. I'm glad. And for the first time in a very long time, I was glad too. A year later, Gideon asked me to marry him. It was a Sunday morning. We were in my kitchen. He was making scrambled eggs while I scrolled through the news on my iPad. Marry me, he said, not taking his eyes off the frying pan. I looked up. Excuse me? Marry me. I don't have a ring because I wanted to ask you first if you even wanted one. I know you hate flashy things. I put the iPad down. Are you being serious right now? Gideon turned off the stove and leaned against the counter, looking at me. I've wanted to ask you for 6 months, but I waited because I know the last year and a half was a lot to process. I didn't want to add pressure. You aren't pressure. I looked at him. This man who walked into my life right as the foundation collapsed, who never asked me to shrink, who gave me space when I was suffocating, and who stood next to me when I was ready to rebuild. Yes, I said. Yes, I will absolutely marry you. Gideon broke into a massive grin. He walked over and kissed me. The eggs got cold and neither of us cared. We got married in June. Keep it small. 30 people in Delaney's backyard. I invited my parents. I invited Holden. I invited Harper. I did not invite Nana Beatrice, who was now in an assisted living facility. And I certainly didn't invite Clarissa. My mother actually cried when I called to tell her she was invited. I assumed you wouldn't want us there, she confessed. I want you there, but there are ground rules. Name them. No drama, no comments about my career, no interrogations about when Gideon and I are having a baby. You are coming as guests, not as a board of directors with voting rights on my life. Understood. On the day of the wedding, my parents arrived early. My father wore a navy suit I hadn't seen before. My mother wore a simple, tasteful floral dress. Holden brought his girlfriend Maeve, whom he met in a therapy support group. They'd been dating for 4 months and seemed incredibly grounded. Harper came solo. Her bakery was turning a solid profit. She had paid off her credit cards, and she had even Venmo'd me $2,000 as a first installment toward what she owed me. Delaney was my maid of honor. Gideon's brother was his best man. Gideon's daughter Alara, who was now 9 years old, was the flower girl. From the day I met her, Alara had decided I was her new favorite person on earth. The ceremony was short. Simple vows under a wooden pergola, no drawn-out speeches. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, I looked out at the chairs. Delaney was wiping her eyes. My parents were smiling warmly. Holden was cheering. Harper was taking photos not for Instagram, but just for us. This was my family, not the one assigned to me by an accident of genetics, but the one I actively chose to keep. The reception was just a catered barbecue in the grass. String lights, a Spotify playlist, easy conversation. While Gideon was getting a beer with his brother, my father walked up to me. I'm proud of you, Sloan, he said, holding a plastic cup of lemonade. Thanks, Dad. Not just for the wedding, for everything, for how you handled what happened, for having the grace to give us a second chance when we didn't deserve it. People deserve second chances when they put in the work to earn them. My father nodded. Your mother wants a quick word. Can you spare a minute? I found my mother near the dessert table. Her eyes were slightly red. Are you okay? I asked. Clarissa called me this morning, she said quietly. I tensed up. What did she want? She found out through a mutual friend that the wedding was today. She wanted to know the address. She wanted to come. Did you tell her? I told her absolutely not. I told her she was not welcome, and that if she showed up, I would personally call the cops and have her trespassed. My mother looked me dead in the eye. I know I should have protected you from her years ago instead of blindly believing her, but I want you to know I get it now, and I will never let her hurt you again. I hadn't expected that. Definitely not from my mother. Thank you, I said softly. Don't thank me. It's what a mother is supposed to do. Clarissa never showed up. I don't know if she drove by or just gave up. It didn't matter. At the end of the night, when the caterers had packed up and it was just Gideon, Alara, and me left in the yard, I sat down on a wooden bench. Gideon sat next to me. Alara was dead asleep, her head resting in his lap, clutching a wilting bouquet of peonies. What are you thinking about? Gideon asked, wrapping his jacket around my shoulders. Just thinking about how a year and a half ago my family took a vote to erase me from their lives. And today I married you surrounded by people who actually give a damn about me. Life moves fast. Life didn't do it, Sloan. You did. You changed the trajectory. Gideon kissed my temple. Do you have any regrets? Only that I didn't do it sooner. I waited 34 years to finally build a fence. Better late than never. Alara shifted in Gideon's lap and blinked her eyes open. Are we officially a family now? She mumbled, half asleep. Yeah, I smiled. We're officially family. Good! Because you promised to teach me how to do heart surgery. Gideon and I laughed. Let's get you through the fourth grade math first, I said. Fine. But right after fractions, we do surgery. Deal. Later that night, in the townhouse Gideon and I had bought together, I tucked Alara into bed. Gideon and I stepped out onto our balcony with 2 glasses of leftover wedding wine. Are you happy? He asked, looking out over the city lights. Yes, I said. I thought about it for a second. Mostly. There are still bad days. Days where I think about Clarissa and how easily she burned everything to the ground. Days where I wonder if I could have navigated it differently. And what do you do on those days? I remind myself that none of it was my fault, that I did the absolute best I could with the toxic hand I was dealt, and that I deserve the life I have right now. Gideon took my hand. You deserve every bit of it. We stood in silence, listening to the distant hum of traffic. 18 months ago, my family took a vote to expel me while I was slicing a Thanksgiving turkey. Today, I had a husband who anchored me, a stepdaughter who wanted to be a surgeon, a best friend who never wavered, parents who finally learned to respect me, siblings who earned their way back into my life, and a home that was mine, built with my sweat, my choices, and my boundaries. A house I built by myself, but was finally sharing with the right people.